We all saw what happened on the court. We all watched Alex Eala dismantle Diana Yastremska in a performance that sent a clear, unambiguous message to every seeded player remaining in the Indian Wells draw. But what happened after the match is the story that deserves equal attention, because it adds a layer of context that will change how the rest of the tour approaches the next time her name appears across the net from them. Rafael Nadal sent a message. Not a cryptic one. Not a carefully diplomatic acknowledgement designed to be interpreted multiple ways. A direct, public, unambiguous expression of support for a player he helped develop. And the tennis world noticed immediately. To understand why that message carries the weight it does, you have to understand what public validation from Nadal actually means within the specific ecosystem of professional tennis. Nadal does not distribute endorsements freely. Since retiring, he has spent his post-playing career largely in the background, running his academy, building his foundation, staying deliberately removed from the daily noise of the tour. He does not insert himself into rivalries. He does not use his platform to anoint successors. When he speaks publicly about an active player, it is because he has reached a considered conclusion and decided the moment warranted the statement. He reached that conclusion about Eala after the Yastremska match. For a young player still establishing herself at WTA 1000 level, that kind of public backing from the sport's most respected recently retired champion carries genuine competitive significance. Not because it changes what happens on the court. Eala's left-handed topspin and baseline construction will win or lose matches on their own merits regardless of who is watching. But because it changes the psychological landscape surrounding those matches in ways that are difficult to quantify and impossible to ignore. Eala is not simply a talented 20-year-old who has produced impressive results over the past 12 months. She is a graduate of the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca, an institution built on the same principles that drove Nadal to 22 Grand Slam titles and decades of sustained competitive dominance. The heavy topspin, the relentless baseline aggression, the refusal to concede free points, the mental fortitude that holds steady when a match turns against you and the most straightforward path is to accept defeat and save energy for the next one. Those qualities were not born in Miami in March 2025. They were built through years of deliberate, demanding work on the clay courts of Mallorca, under a coaching system that treats competitive intensity not as a special characteristic to be celebrated, but as a non-negotiable baseline expectation applied to every player, every session, every single day. When Eala stood on that Indian Wells court and systematically wore down Yastremska, forcing errors through accumulated pressure, maintaining her defensive structure under the Ukrainians' most explosive offensive bursts, refusing to concede the match narrative even when the exchanges were at their most dangerous, she was executing exactly the philosophy the academy instilled. And Nadal, who built that academy and understands its methodology more intimately than anyone alive, recognized precisely what he was watching. His message was not a spontaneous reaction to a surprising result. It was a public confirmation of what his private evaluation had already concluded, that the work done in Mallorca is now showing up in the results that matter, on the stages that matter, against the opponents that matter. That is what the message meant. And in professional tennis, where the psychological dimension of competition is at least as consequential as the physical one, the rest of the tour understands exactly what it signals. When she arrives at French Open, she won't just be another rising seed with a few impressive wins behind her. She'll walk into Roland Garros carrying something far more symbolic, the legacy connection to Rafael Nadal, the player who transformed that tournament into his personal kingdom with 14 titles. And that matters in Paris. The French crowd has a unique relationship with Nadal's history on that clay. When Eala steps on those courts as one of the most prominent graduates of the Rafa Nadal Academy, playing a style that reflects the same patience, resilience, and heavy left-handed clay court philosophy, the atmosphere could become something special. Fans will instantly recognize that lineage. But the crowd isn't the only factor changing. From this point forward, every opponent who sees Eala's name in the draw carries a new awareness. Her win over Diana Yastremska planted the idea, and Nadal's public praise reinforced it. Her game isn't just a collection of talented shots built from a strong junior foundation. It's a system. A structured, disciplined competitive system that grows more dangerous the longer a match lasts. Players who try to overpower her, blasting through rallies the way Yastremska attempted, may discover that the defensive structure they're attacking was designed specifically to absorb that kind of pressure. Eala's style thrives in attrition, point by point, game by game, set by set. Now, it's important to be clear about what Nadal's message actually means, and what it doesn't. Praise from Rafael Nadal is powerful, but it doesn't guarantee results. Tennis simply doesn't work that way. Nadal knows that better than almost anyone who has ever stepped on a court. Eala still has development ahead of her. Her serve remains the most frequently discussed vulnerability in her game. The physical toll of a full WTA Tour calendar will test endurance, recovery, and consistency in ways this season has only started to reveal. Losses will come, some painful, some educational, many both at the same time. That's part of the journey. What Nadal's message did accomplish is something far more meaningful than a headline or a viral moment. It validated the foundation. The person who has watched Eala's evolution most closely, from a 13-year-old arriving in Mallorca from the Philippines to a top 30 professional competing against the best in the world, made it clear that the trajectory is legitimate. That belief wasn't delivered as marketing or promotion. It was a measured assessment from someone who has experienced the extreme demands of elite professional tennis firsthand. For a 20-year-old carrying the expectations of more than 100 million fans in the Philippines, adjusting to a sudden surge in global attention, and navigating the relentless grind of top-level competition, that kind of grounded endorsement matters enormously. Rankings fluctuate. Endorsements come and go. But credible belief from someone who has lived the entire path, from promising junior to global legend, provides a different kind of confidence. Nadal understands that journey better than anyone. And when he chooses to publicly express pride after a major victory, without prompting, without theatrics, it sends a signal. He doesn't hand out those moments casually. Around the tour, players notice signals like that. And they should. Tennis big long the implications for the rest of Alex Eala's season deserve deeper consideration than the usual post-match excitement that follows a breakthrough victory. Moments like this can easily be reduced to highlight clips, rankings updates, and social media reactions. But the real significance lies in how the ecosystem of professional tennis begins to view a player after a result that changes perception. And perception on the WTA Tour can be just as important as rankings. When Eala arrives at the French Open, she will not simply be another young competitor entering the draw with momentum. She will arrive carrying a story that resonates deeply with that particular tournament. The venue itself, Roland Garros, is inseparable from the legacy of Rafael Nadal. For 2 decades, Nadal defined what clay court tennis could look like at its most relentless, most disciplined, and most mentally demanding. 14 titles turned the tournament into something closer to a personal kingdom than a conventional sporting venue. The French crowd understands that history intimately. Few sporting relationships between an athlete and a venue run as deep as the one between Nadal and Paris. Every year the echoes of that dominance linger across the red clay. So when Eala walks onto those courts as one of the most recognizable graduates of the Rafa Nadal Academy, the symbolism becomes impossible to ignore. Her style already mirrors many of the principles Nadal spent his career perfecting. Relentless defense, heavy topspin built for clay, point construction rooted in patience rather than impatience, and an almost stubborn refusal to concede rallies prematurely. She does not rush points unnecessarily. She absorbs pressure. She extends exchanges until opponents begin making decisions they normally wouldn't make. For the Paris crowd, which has spent years celebrating exactly that kind of tennis, the connection will feel natural. It creates a crowd dynamic that could become one of the most intriguing storylines of the tournament. But perhaps more important than the crowd reaction is the shift taking place quietly among her competitors. Professional players pay attention to signals. They watch matches. They analyze scorelines. They notice when someone starts producing results against opponents who were previously considered out of reach. Eala's win over Diana Yastremska was not simply another result in a long tennis season. It served as a proof-of-concept moment, a demonstration that her defensive system, patience, and strategic discipline could hold up against the kind of aggressive power tennis that defines much of the modern women's game. Yastremska attempted to dictate play through force. She tried to shorten rallies, hit through the court, and overwhelm Eala before points could stretch into extended exchanges. But that strategy ran into something built specifically to resist it. Eala's game is not merely a collection of impressive individual shots. A good forehand here, a clever drop shot there. It functions more like a coherent system designed around endurance, structure, and tactical clarity. Every rally serves a purpose. Every defensive recovery buys time. Every extended point gradually shifts the pressure back onto the opponent. Against players who thrive on rhythm and quick-strike tennis, that structure can become frustratingly difficult to break down. Point by point, game by game, set by set. This is precisely the type of dynamic that Rafael Nadal made famous on clay courts around the world. Opponents often entered matches believing they could overpower him, only to realize halfway through that the defensive wall in front of them had been engineered specifically to withstand sustained attack. The parallels are not perfect, of course. Nadal remains one of the most unique competitors in tennis history, but the philosophical similarities are clear enough that fans and analysts have started noticing them. Still, it's crucial to recognize what Nadal's public message actually represents, and equally important to understand what it does not represent. When Nadal expressed pride in Eala following her victory, he was not guaranteeing future titles or predicting dominance. Tennis rarely rewards certainty. Even the greatest players in history endured periods of defeat, adjustment, and reinvention. Nadal himself built his reputation not on effortless victories but on the constant process of adaptation. He understands better than almost anyone that development never truly stops. Eala remains early in that process. Her serve continues to be cited as the most vulnerable aspect of her game. At the highest levels of professional tennis, a slightly inconsistent serve can become a focal point opponents target relentlessly. Improving first serve percentage, increasing pace without sacrificing accuracy, and developing greater variety will likely remain key priorities in the coming seasons. Then there are the physical demands of a full professional calendar. The WTA Tour is unforgiving in its schedule. Players move rapidly between continents, surfaces, climates, and competitive environments. Maintaining peak conditioning across months of travel and competition requires extraordinary discipline. For a 20-year-old still adjusting to that rhythm, the learning curve can be steep. There will be losses ahead. Some will arrive against opponents ranked higher. Others may come unexpectedly against players lower in the rankings. That unpredictability is part of tennis at every level of the sport. But none of that diminishes the deeper meaning of Nadal's public endorsement, because it came from someone who has watched Eala's development for years, not weeks. When she first arrived in Mallorca as a teenager from the Philippines, she was not yet the player fans see today. She was a young prospect navigating a new environment, learning the demands of elite training, and absorbing a philosophy of tennis built around resilience and strategic patience. The Rafa Nadal Academy was designed precisely for that kind of long-term development. It focuses not just on technical improvement but on mental structure, the ability to compete through adversity, maintain discipline during difficult matches, and approach the sport with the same professionalism that defined Nadal's own career. Over the years, coaches there have watched Eala evolve from a promising junior into a genuine contender on the professional stage. Nadal has seen that evolution up close. So when he publicly acknowledged her progress, it carried weight beyond ordinary praise. It wasn't marketing. It wasn't promotional messaging. It was a measured evaluation from someone who understands exactly what readiness looks like. For Eala, that kind of validation arrives at an important moment. Her profile has risen dramatically. In the Philippines, a nation of more than 100 million people, she has quickly become one of the most closely followed athletes in the country. Every match generates headlines. Every victory ignites national excitement. Every defeat invites scrutiny. Managing that level of attention while continuing to improve as a player is not easy. Young athletes often struggle when expectations accelerate faster than development. But grounded support from mentors who have experienced the same pressures can provide stability during that transition. Nadal knows that journey from the inside better than anyone. He has navigated global fame, national expectations, relentless media coverage, and the physical toll of a sport that demands absolute commitment. He understands how quickly momentum can build, and how important it is to stay focused on long-term growth rather than short-term attention. That is why his words resonate so strongly. They signal belief not in a single result, but in the structure behind it. And across the professional tour, players are paying attention. When a legend of Nadal's stature publicly expresses confidence in a young competitor, it subtly shifts how that player is perceived. Opponents prepare differently. Analysts examine matches more carefully. Tournament organizers recognize a new storyline emerging within the sport. Eala's path forward will still depend on the same fundamentals every professional relies on: improvement, resilience, and consistency. But moments like this change the context around that journey. They transform a promising player into a serious presence. And from this point forward, every opponent who draws her name in a tournament bracket will understand something clearly. They are not facing a temporary surge of form. They are facing a competitor whose game has been shaped by one of the most demanding tennis philosophies ever developed, a system designed to endure pressure rather than avoid it. That realization alone can alter matches before they even begin. And if the trajectory continues the way many observers now believe it might, the rest of the tour will need to start adjusting to a new reality. Because the rise of Alex Eala may only be getting started. Tennis Fire.